and I then formed American Pharmaceutical Partners. What that taught me was in this organization, which I ran for about 10 years, the need for scale. We had 150 FDA-approved injectable drugs. We manufactured 1 million vials a day. In the 2007 heparin crisis, we were the source of heparin for the nation. And it showed me there and then that in times of crises and scale, unless you had scale, we could not practice medicine on a global scale. By 2005, we had developed this first protein nanoparticle, Abraxane, and got it approved for pancreatic cancer, breast cancer, and lung cancer. And this was the beginning of my journey in which I said we needed to understand this immune system. This is but the beginning. And so for the next 10 years, we went underground, so to speak, and formed NantWorks to really understand this immune system. And the next slide will then show what I mean by this. And I think this slide is to try and explain 40 years of my life in one slide, in which all of us have in our body this thing called the natural killer cell. This cell arose 1.5 billion years ago in invertebrates. And it is around in order for us to protect our human body from infection, from cancer. And if you see the slide, the video on the left, this natural killer cell roams, activates, and finds a cancerous cell and kills it and quite literally dissolves it. We then adapted our human modernized system to create what we call adaptive cells, so we can create memory killer T cells on the right-hand side, and vertebrates, like ourselves now, have the combination, and you'll see that video, of that infected cell and a killer T cell roaming, but now taught to recognize an infected cell. The beauty of these two cells working together, I thought, would be the NAN cancer vaccine, and there was an orchestrator. The orchestrator was this cell called the dendritic cell. But how do you teach this dendritic cell? Well, you can teach this dendritic cell with RNA, or you can teach this dendritic cell with DNA, or you can activate this dendritic cell with adjuvants. So the key and the secret was to find a way to bring all these technologies to bear simultaneously in the form of the NAN cancer vaccine and understand the harnessing of this immune system. It's taken me 40 plus years to barely understand, but really implement at global scale. The next slide. So that is the what. The next is the how. And if in fact we have this understanding and we can change the paradigms of care, whether it be for COVID, whether it be for TB, whether it be for HIV, whether it be for cancer and HPV, diseases, Burkitt's lymphoma that affect Africa, then we could actually transport this knowledge and leapfrog current standards of care. And that's the basis of today's announcement. The next slide. And how would we do that? I'm grateful for President Cyril Ramaphosa's leadership that has encouraged me to interact with all elements of his government, starting with the CSIR, which is an amazing institution, the Council of Science and Industrial Research, as well as with the MRC under Glenda Gray, and then harness truly the world-class talent of South Africa. I think, as I said, based on my own personal training and my current knowledge of what exists in this country, that under the University of Cape Town, University of Witwatersrand, Stellenbosch, KwaZulu-Natal, and elsewhere in the country, there is amazing scientific talent. So if we could harness that talent and integrate that into a global scale manufacturing, we could have access for all of Africa for advanced healthcare from the base of South Africa. That is the basis of today's announcement. And I'd like to share with you a little bit of how we would plan to go about that. The next slide, please. Let me just speak about what NantWorks is. As I said, from 2010 to 2021, we went under quite literally a little skunk works and built this campus of close to 10 acres. And for a decade, quietly worked, if I could play this video, of this campus of one of the largest genomic centers in the country, of doing whole tumor DNA and RNA for cancer, tying a fiber infrastructure to the rest of the country like that of the Large Hadron Collider, so that we can generate supercomputing and understand with scientists at the highest level the issues of the immune system. So thus was born NantWorks. And what did we do as we did this? We began to realize that there was a need for three pillars of the company to embark upon. The next slide. And obviously the first pillar being the health and life sciences. And within health and life sciences, cancer is one of the really concerning issues, especially for Africa, as this non-infectious epidemic that is arising with a poor survival rate. And even in the United States, where high-dose chemotherapy is the standard of care. And we launched then a genomics program to understand the cancer. It turns out that that same therapy is for infectious diseases, in which we're treating TB, HIV, and then COVID occurred. But what was really clear was for this entity to take on the capacity of large-scale biological manufacturing, automated bioengineering, robotics, and artificial intelligence. Which then said what we really needed as well is a next generation infrastructure of fiber and connectivity so that we could create data centers that could move data terabytes a second so that we can end up with machine learning. And as you see, the Zoom room that I'm playing on right now, together with Eric Yuan, started Zoom so that we can have communications. And the connectivity and communication became an important tool, but it really highlighted the need for power and water, which then brought us into solar-based technologies, next-generation materials, with regard to addressing issues as important as climate change. Obviously, time does not permit me to go into these three pillars, but my view is that these three pillars with CSIR and its mission could transform how we look at humanity, both as from healthcare, energy, and connectivity. I will try to focus now my attention for the rest of the talk on the health and life sciences. The next slide. So let's go back to this quest. So for the last 10 years, quietly, our organization has taken on the responsibility of ensuring that we have the know-how and IP for every cellular therapy, whether it be stem cells or mesenchymal stem cells, whether it be natural killer cells, whether it be T cells. Ensuring that we have the ability to manufacture mRNA and self-amplifying RNA and next-generation RNA. Make sure that we have the ability to deliver DNA, whether it be in the second-generation adenovirus that is different from the current Ad5s. And make sure that we have access and ability to manufacture every modernized adjuvant. If we did that as an organization and understood it, we have the ability, next slide, to deliver these technologies. Here's an example of what we did. I mentioned to you that I was at the University of British Columbia, and in 1992, Dr. Hans Klingerman identified a patient that had a cancer of these natural killer cells, and was able to get the rights to develop that natural killer cell in an unlimited supply and grow it like a HeLa cell line. But we could engineer this natural killer cell and target it to the breast cancer cell, or target it to a prostate cancer cell, or target it to a lung cancer. And under the microscope, this is time lapse. If you play the video, you will see how this natural killer cell, when targeted, could specifically go after this human breast cancer cell and within 7 hours kill it. And on the right-hand side, you will see how this natural killer cell, with which we are given God's gift, given us these cells. And we could now genetically engineer these cells by making them targeted just to the tumor cell. And I believe this would transform cancer care. Next slide. And on that basis, we filed the patent, and it just got issued July 27, 2021, on this NAN cancer vaccine. But the NAN cancer vaccine is a complex interplay of multiple molecules, including the adenovirus, including the natural killer cells, including the yeast, including the mRNA, etc. And while IP is important, and I understand there's huge discussions about IP, what's more important is know-how. Next slide. Because the biological manufacturing process is complex. And this complex, as you could see from the video playing, biological manufacturing process is large-scale biological manufacturing process in which we took the risk of developing large-scale biological manufacturing processes from the outset. The next slide. And what was important was to take billions of cells, quite literally, reduce them to single packets of units that could be cryopreserved and stored and transported anywhere in the world. And that these single units then are merely hung in the clinic to treat a cancer patient. Next slide. Well, what have we done in the United States? So from 2017 to 2021, we've manufactured over 5 trillion cells. We've dosed over 1,300 doses, which represents over 2.7 trillion cells, and 0 cytokine storm. And quite literally, it is now hung for 30 minutes. Next slide. And what have we achieved as a consequence? Now these cryopreserved targeted NK cells are merely thawed. And by August 2017, we provided the first NK cell treatment in a metastatic cancer, pancreatic cancer patient. And I'm pleased to say that if our theory is correct, then this treatment should be agnostic to the tumor type. So we went from pancreas to breast to lung to head and neck, Merkel cell, and we found complete remissions in these cancers, including bladder cancer, and said to ourselves, and we now have a platform that can truly change the paradigm of care. Next slide. So that was the plan on cancer, and we were well on our way treating that and actually starting our work on HIV when COVID hit. So by January 2020, we had already done 150 patients in cancer using our adenovirus vaccine. And COVID hit, and we realized we needed to pivot. And as everybody knows, the entire industry went after the spike protein based on the vaccines to generate antibodies to block the cell. So if you have then the infected cell, and this, let's say, is your lung cell, and you generate an antibody against the spike protein, the goal is to block the entry of the virus. And that's important. But unfortunately, it does not prevent transmission because it does not kill this infected cell. And one way to kill this infected cell is for us to have a T cell, very much like I showed in cancer, or a natural killer cell. And it turns out that when you have an antibody, vaccine against a nucleic capsid, you end up with a memory T cell. It lasts for 17 years. This nucleic capsid is involved in the replication of the virus. So if you had a vaccine that had both S plus N, you would not only block the entry, but you would kill the infected cell. It is my belief that this is our path to stopping this pandemic. This is our path to stopping transmission. This is our path to overcoming all these mutants, because the mutation occurs at this level, not as much as the inner level. So on that basis, next slide, we approached South Africa, we approached Medical Research Council, we approached the academic institutions, we approached the scientists, we approached SAPRA, and we launched the first Sasonke Boost trial, was to take our DNA T-cell vaccine to boost healthcare workers. And I'm grateful for that now, because this is now active and completed phase 1, we're into phase 2. We, however, feel that the next 2 trials, which are pending, is if we took an RNA and a DNA T-cell vaccine, you would have the best of all worlds. You'd have the antibodies, you'd have the T-cells, and you'd generate memory. But because of raw material shortages, it's important to also have an orthogonal method of making RBD subunit proteins. And the ability to do that manufacturing either out of the yeast or plants, and CSIR are experts in this. And then adding adjuvants. And next slide. So these trials, the next, what I call the next generation nucleic acid trial, the TEMBO-1 trial, is a mRNA vaccine plus a DNA vaccine. And the idea is you would generate antibodies and you generate T cells, but both to N and S. And now you'd have memory and you have neutralization. This paper just got published literally a few days ago, in which BARDA had supported us in the non-human primate studies during the warp speed in the United States, where we were able to show against a SARS-CoV-2 challenge in non-human primates, a complete abolition of the viruses in the lungs and nose. So this proved that this second generation adenovirus, which is different from the current Ad5s, has the capability of completely protecting against, at least we believe, transmission. If you then add it to the RNA, which is very potent in stimulating antibodies. But if you look at the slide, you begin to see, or maybe understand, the complexity that you need to understand how to manufacture RNA. You need to understand how to manufacture adjuvants. You need to understand how to manufacture adenovirus. And happily, I'm happy here to report that we have large-scale manufacture and GMP scale of all of these 3 platforms. Next slide. But as I said, we partnered then with Baylor and IDRI, where the yeast-based subunit protein of RBD, and you add that to an adjuvant, has now also shown activity in non-human primates. And I'm happy to say we've brought that in, and this can be manufactured either by yeast or by plants. Now you have orthogonal manufacturing methods, and again, we have these methods. Next slide. And as I said, this is what we have now in the United States, both upstream and downstream. It is highly critical for the country to not just have downstream manufacturing, but upstream manufacturing, know-how, and self-sufficiency, and capacity to lead Africa. Next slide. In order to implement this, we quickly created the Chan Soon-Shiong Institute for Medicine in July 2017 to implement what may be perceived as non-conventional treatment of not using high-dose chemotherapy, but to treat patients by activating the immune system. And we've done so. Next slide. So we are now set with this knowledge, technology, manufacturing capacity, proof of principle, proof of concept, multiple 25 phase 2-3 clinical trials in the United States to leapfrog the current standards of care. And it's my goal and hope that Africa could really benefit from these technologies that I've learned. Next slide. And I'm grateful, Mr. President, not only for your leadership for bringing this together, and I'm grateful for the University of Cape Town, for the Vice Chancellor, Mamachete, and Linda Gale Becker and Graham Mankies, with whom I'm participating. Vice Chancellor Zeblon at University of Witwatersrand and Shabir Mahdi, who's working with us, planning both an HPV cancer center, planning for TB, planning for HIV, and planning for COVID, both at the University of Cape Town and Wits. At the University of Stellenbosch and KwaZulu-Natal, together with Vice Chancellor Willem de Villiers and Professor Tulio de Oliveira, we've established SERI so that we can do the genomic sequencing and be there in rapid response. I'm very grateful for Professor Glenda Gray of really taking a very strong leadership role in helping us guide us through these paths. And then Dr. Talani and Dr. Rachel at CSIR, with whom I've met now, and I really believe this partnership will harness the world-class talent of South Africa. And then finally, next slide, I've touched clearly on health and life sciences. There's no time, obviously, to talk about the energy and renewables and connectivity and communications, but I did want to make one statement of water. Next slide. Because water is the gift of life, and we have now developed this atmospheric-driven drinking water utilizing the power of the sun, and the video, as you see on the bottom, uses no power and literally deployed, and drinking water at fresh, pure drinking water. And we will be deploying this. In fact, I've already deployed this in Johannesburg, but throughout the country. Mr. President, I want to thank you for giving us this opportunity to present our plans to come back to South Africa to present this work, and I thank you for this time.
Thank you very much, Dr. Soon-Shiong, as a giant of medicine in your own right, for your presentation and its promise of transforming our lives from the cellular level up. Thank you very much. I would now like to invite President Cyril Ramaphosa to deliver his response to Dr. Soon-Shiong's vision for a healthier future for all of us and for transformation in many other domains of the human experience. Mr. President, over to you.
Thank you very much, Tyrone. Minister Nzimande, Minister of Higher Education and Science and Innovation, Dr. Patla, Minister of Health, Minister Patel, Minister of Trade, Industry and Competition, and of course, Dr. Patrick Soon-Shiong, the founder of NantWorks. And I also extend my greetings to Dr. Thulani Dlamini, the CEO of CSIR, and the President and CEO of the South African Medical Research Council, Professor Glenda Gray, Directors General of the various departments in our government, and importantly, the university vice chancellors who are here with us tonight on this platform, the CEOs of research organizations and members of the media, and ladies and gentlemen. I want to begin by welcoming our son of Gqeberha, Dr. Patrick Soon-Shiong. I was very pleased, Patrick, to see your Wikipedia entry describing you as a South African American, with the South African part cited first. That, to me, truly confirmed your identity, your origin, your genesis, and everything about you. That first and foremost, you're a South African. And thereafter, I don't know what you are a scientist, you are everything that straddles this globe. You're just amazing. And as you were outlining what you've been doing for the last 40 years, I kept making notes because I want to have a dig at Dr. Nzimande at the cabinet meetings to find out if he remembers all the things that you've been saying of a scientific nature. We're very proud of you, extremely proud of you. You have flown our flag high globally, not just in the United States, but in many corners of the globe where your company does business. You are setting a great example to our many countrymen and women who are living abroad. We regularly get contacted by professionals and, may I say, business people who are in the South African diaspora, who want to invest here, who want to contribute to the development of the country, who want to give back, and who want to see their country prosper. Now, you have gone out to the world. It reminds me very much of a book that I read many years ago called Africa, the Biography of the Continent by John Reader. And in one of the portions, one of the parts of that book, he talks about how humanity originated on the African continent. And a group of people then left. They left and went out to colonize the whole world over many thousands of years. And the colonization that and the innovation that they displayed was driven by the talents that had evolved in Africa. Everything that they did from an innovation point of view, from a creativity point of view, had originated in this continent, the mother continent of the whole world. And when I look at you and hear you speak, that brings back John Reader's book to mind, that you are one of those South Africans who left our country to go do great things in the United States, and you were driven and propelled by the talent and the innovation that had originated in this continent, in this country that had given birth to you. So we're truly proud that today you don't only see yourself as a South African American, but that you are coming back and bringing something back. You told me in conversation that you're going to bring your children back here, and because you are a South African, you want them to know that they are South Africans as well, much as they were born in the United States, and that they should even have their South African citizenship back. I'd like to thank Dr. Nzimande because he led me to you. I thank him. because today you are presenting something that is going to be amazing for us. Without a doubt, this initiative, which is going to be underpinned by investment, is a game changer for our country. Minister Nzimande and the team have worked tirelessly to ensure that a vision of this nature will become a reality. And I'm particularly pleased that you have worked with so many of our talented people, universities and university vice chancellors and various professors and our scientists, and more importantly with the CSIR as well as the Medical Research Council. Yesterday, I participated in a global COVID-19 summit convened by President Biden of the United States. There were quite a number of heads of states and various people from science and philanthropy. We discussed not just goals and targets for ending the current pandemic, but also what we need to do to prepare for the health emergencies of the future. In this respect, the investment and initiative by NantWorks is most timely for our fight against COVID-19, for infectious disease management, for cancer research and treatment, and for future pandemic preparedness. As the African continent, we've been bemoaning the fact that we have not been fully prepared for this pandemic from a number of respects. Now, this is going to make us to be ahead of the curve. This is the third significant pharmaceutical production initiative and investment in South Africa to be announced this year. 3 months ago, the World Bank, France, Germany, and the US committed, and President Biden spoke about it yesterday, as well as the Director General of the World Health Organization. They have committed to invest over 10 billion rand into Aspen Pharmacare to boost the production of COVID-19 vaccines, not only for our country, but for the African continent. The WHO also chose South Africa to host an mRNA manufacturing hub with our own BioVac. Cumulatively, they will contribute to our collective ambition for the continent to manufacture 60% of its vaccine needs by 2040. It will also strengthen South Africa's pharmaceutical industry that is well established but disadvantaged because we still import a large proportion of products, particularly the active pharmaceutical ingredients, the APIs, or the drug substances. The investment will have what you are going to do here is going to have a multiplier effect on several fronts. One, it will strengthen our capacity to clinically manage COVID-19 without any doubt. It will also embolden our capacity to clinically manage HIV/AIDS and tuberculosis and all diseases with a heavy health burden. Now, South Africa has the highest COVID-19 caseload in Africa, the largest number of people living with HIV and AIDS, and a massive TB problem. We do have current treatment programs for all these three, but COVID-19 has brought new challenges, not least of all resource constraints. The setting up of clinical centers for excellence will contribute to quality improvement in managing these other diseases. They also bolster our management of cancer, which you've spoken about extensively and done a lot of work in your research. The establishment of a cancer treatment and research center by Nantafrica at the University of the Witwatersrand comes at a time when the rates of cervical cancer are growing. the incidence rates of this particular cancer in South Africa is higher than the global average. Now, through this initiative, we also hope to train more oncologists in both the academic and state sectors that can be deployed where they are needed most. The third aspect is that Dr. Soon-Shiong has identified excellent institutions with the capacity and capabilities to spread their technologies beyond our borders. The Chen Soon-Shiong Family Foundation is setting up the largest genomics facility on the African continent. This Center for Epidemic Response and Innovation will enable Africa to improve the treatment, the diagnosis, and the prevention of human diseases. Now, to put another cherry on the cake, the partnership between the CSIR and NantWorks will build on the CSIR's excellent scientific capabilities to manufacture biologics and vaccines. Nantafrica has invested in a biologic manufacturing facility in the Western Cape, and I look forward to the ribbon-cutting ceremony in 3 months' time, and I certainly will be there. And the fourth part is this investment and initiative will facilitate technology and skills transfer, something we as African countries have long been making a case for in the fight against COVID-19 in particular. This will provide more opportunities for broad-based Black economic empowerment and more opportunities for young people. And through this partnership, we will be able to develop products and infrastructure for manufacturing and drive innovation. It is aligned with the CSIR's industrialization, which is focused strategy to create local technology-intensive industries. Now, given that we import many of our pharmaceuticals, this initiative will definitely greatly strengthen our localization efforts, thereby growing local industries and sectors. And this collaboration will also lead to job creation and mitigate our unemployment crisis. We welcome the opportunity to develop high-end skills and create high-end jobs. And this collaboration will also address challenges beyond the health area, such as water, desalination, and atmospheric production of water, as was said earlier. This will be critical, given that we are a water-stressed country. Now, the partnership will also focus on renewable energy and battery storage, as well as on the production of bioplastics and replacement for cement production. Now, the principle of self-reliance is at the heart of the African Union's Agenda 2063. The NantWorks investment and initiative and the CSIR collaboration will bring us all the more closer to not only meeting this key aspiration, but to achieving a number of sustainable development goals by the end of the decade. Now, I have no doubt that this collaboration will place South Africa and Africa as a whole at the cutting edge of healthcare, of science, of technology, and innovation. Dr. Soon-Shiong, you are to be commended for your confidence in your own country's and Africa's development. You have heeded the Tumamina call, send me call. And for this, we thank you. Thank you, too, to all who have been part of this launch. The NantWorks team in the United States, our team, the presidency, and our partners at the CSIR, ministers who've been so deeply involved in this. I thank you all, and also the South African Medical Research Council, and of course, our great performing universities and the scientist community of our country. This is a project, if I can call it that, that has a high level of collaboration. And this is what pleases me no end, that we are collaborating, we are working together, and together, and working together, we can take South Africa to higher levels. And Dr. Soon-Shiong, I thank you for this, and I thank you for coming home, and welcome home, son of South Africa. Thank you very much.